My wife thinks I'm an idiot. She's been thinking that for about 3 years now, ever since I caught her texting someone named Bear at 2 in the morning while she pretended to be asleep next to me. The thing about being underestimated is that it gives you one hell of an advantage when people least expect it. My name is Harlan Pierce, and I'm 47 years old. I run a commercial drone operation here in Kansas City, which means I spend my days flying expensive toys around construction sites and real estate developments, taking pictures that help rich people get richer. It's honest work, pays well, and gives me access to some very interesting technology that most people don't think about when they're planning their secret affairs. My wife Liora is a luxury real estate broker. She sells million-dollar homes to people who wipe their asses with what I make in a year. She's beautiful, polished, and has the kind of smile that can close a deal or hide a lie with equal effectiveness. For the past 18 months, she's been using that smile to cover up the biggest lie of our 15-year marriage. The morning everything changed started like any other. Liora was in the bathroom doing whatever women do that takes 45 minutes and costs more than my truck payment. I was making coffee and checking my phone when I noticed something odd about our home security app. We have one of those fancy doorbell cameras that records everything, and I happened to glance at the timestamp on a notification from last night, 2:17 a.m. Motion detected at front door. I pulled up the footage and watched my wife of 15 years sneak out of our house like a teenager, climb into a black BMW that definitely wasn't hers, and drive off into the night. The car belonged to Barrett, a local developer who goes by Bear and has the kind of ego that requires a nickname to match his personality. "Harlan, have you seen my diamond earrings?" Liora called from upstairs. "Which ones?" I called back, still staring at the video of her betrayal. "The ones Bear bought me for closing the Riverside deal." The ones Bear bought her. Not the company, not the client. Bear. She didn't even bother to lie anymore. I saved the video to 3 different cloud accounts and went upstairs to find my wife putting on makeup that cost more than most people's rent. She was getting ready for another client meeting that would probably involve fewer clothes and more of Bear's stamina, which I'd overheard her discussing with her best friend Kendra in graphic detail just last week. "Found them," she said, fastening the earrings. "I'm showing the Henderson property today. Might be late." The Henderson property had been sold 6 months ago. I knew because I'd flown the drone footage for the listing myself. "Sure thing, honey. I'll keep dinner warm." She kissed my cheek, and I smelled cologne that wasn't mine. Something expensive and woody that screamed, "I drive a BMW and steal other men's wives." After she left, I sat in my home office and did what any reasonable man would do when he discovers his wife is cheating. I started gathering evidence, not for some dramatic confrontation or a weepy reconciliation. No, I had something much more satisfying in mind. My son Stan knocked on the office door. He's 13, smarter than both his parents combined, and has been watching our marriage fall apart with the kind of quiet observation that runs in the Pierce family. "Dad, Mom's been getting packages delivered to Mrs. Henderson's house." "How do you know that?" "I track all our family phones through the app, remember? Mom's been spending a lot of time at addresses that don't match her work calendar." Smart kid, too smart for his own good, but in this case, that was going to work in our favor. "Stan, how would you feel about helping your old man with a little project?" He grinned. "What kind of project?" "The kind that involves drones, cameras, and teaching some very bad people a very important lesson about consequences." That afternoon, while Liora was probably learning new positions with Bear, I was learning everything I could about Barrett. Turns out, when you run a commercial drone business, you have access to a lot of interesting information about local developers, construction permits, zoning applications, business partnerships, and most importantly, building security systems. Bear owned a penthouse downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a rooftop pool. The kind of place where a man might take his best friend's wife for an afternoon of adultery, thinking the height and privacy would keep their secrets safe. The thing about height is that it works both ways, and I had some very sophisticated drones. My phone buzzed with a text from Liora. "Client dinner running late, don't wait up." I texted back, "No problem. Enjoy your meal." Then I loaded my best drone into the truck and drove downtown to get some footage that was going to change everything. Chapter 2. Systems Failure. The video I captured that night was better than anything Hollywood could have produced. High definition, perfect lighting from the penthouse windows, and a crystal-clear view of my wife and her lover enjoying what she probably thought was a private moment. The rooftop pool provided an especially artistic backdrop for their betrayal. I spent the next morning making copies. Lots of copies. Cloud storage, external drives, even burned a few DVDs for that old-school touch. Then I called my best friend, Simon Archer. Simon is an ex-cop who runs a security consulting business, which means he knows exactly how to ruin someone's life without breaking any laws. He also has a sense of humor darker than mine and a complete lack of patience for cheating spouses. "Harlan, please tell me you have something good," he said when he answered the phone. "I have something better than good. I have something nuclear." "I'll be right over." Simon arrived 20 minutes later with coffee and the kind of grim smile that usually preceded someone's life falling apart. I showed him the footage, and he whistled low. "Jesus, Harlan. She's not even trying to be discreet. Gets better. Stan's been tracking her phone. She's been lying about her location for months. What do you want to do about it?" "I want to destroy them both. Completely, legally. And I want them to know it was me." Simon leaned back in his chair. "That's a tall order, but I like your thinking. What's the plan?" The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. First, we were going to cut off Liora's access to our joint finances, every account, every credit card, every investment. Then, we were going to make sure her employer knew exactly what kind of client relations she'd been conducting. Finally, we were going to introduce Bear to the concept of public humiliation. "One thing at a time," Simon said. "Start with the money. Everything else flows from there." I spent the afternoon at the bank, then at my lawyer's office, then at my investment firm. By 5 p.m., Liora Pierce had gone from wealthy housewife to financially cut off, and she didn't even know it yet. My phone rang at 6:30. Liora, and she sounded panicked. "Harlan, there's something wrong with my credit card. It was declined at dinner." "That's weird." "Which card?" "All of them. Even the American Express." "Huh. Maybe there's a problem with the bank's system. You should probably come home and we'll figure it out together." "I can't come home right now. I'm with a client." "Sure you are. Tell Bear I said hello." The silence on the other end of the line was worth 15 years of marriage. "Harlan, what did you just say?" "I said tell Bear I said hello. You know, Barrett Cole, your client. The one you've been meeting at his penthouse. The one who bought you those earrings." "Should I go on?" More silence. Then, "We need to talk." "Yes, we do. But not tonight. Tonight you can figure out how to pay for dinner with your boyfriend. I hear the Riverside Hotel has very reasonable rates." I hung up and looked at Stan, who was pretending to do homework while obviously listening to every word. "Dad, that was cold." "Son, that was just the beginning." The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Liora and a text message that said simply, "Please call me. We can work this out." But I wasn't interested in working anything out. I was interested in watching her world burn. I made coffee, checked my email, and found a message from an anonymous account with the subject line, "You might find this interesting." The message contained a single photo, Liora and Bear at a restaurant downtown, holding hands across the table like teenagers. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 hours after our phone call. The return address was from Kendra Holt, Leora's best friend. Apparently, even her closest allies were starting to jump ship. My phone rang. "Simon. Turn on Channel 7 News," he said. I grabbed the remote and flipped to the local morning show. The business segment was running a story about ethics in real estate, featuring an anonymous tip about agents who engage in inappropriate relationships with clients. They didn't mention names, but the footage of Liora's brokerage office was pretty clear. "How did you manage that?" I asked. "I didn't. Someone beat us to it. Your wife has more enemies than she knows." "Good. Makes our job easier." That afternoon, I got a call from Monica Voss, Liora's assistant. Monica was 28, ambitious, and smart enough to recognize when her boss was about to become unemployable. "Mr. Pierce, I think we should meet." "What about?" "About the future. Yours, mine, and definitely not your wife's." We met at a coffee shop downtown, and Monica laid out everything she knew about Liora's affair, her lies to clients, and most importantly, her financial irregularities. Nothing illegal, but plenty that would get her fired and probably sued. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I like my job, and I'm not going down with her ship. Also, because she's been treating me like garbage for 2 years, and I have a very good memory." "What do you need from me?" "A recommendation letter when this all blows up. And maybe a job if you know anyone who needs a very discreet assistant with excellent organizational skills. I think we can work something out." That evening, Liora came home. She looked terrible. Her makeup was smeared, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had the desperate look of someone whose carefully constructed life was collapsing in real time. "Harlan, we need to talk." "No, we don't. You need to pack your things and get out of my house." "This is my house too." "Actually, it's not. Check the deed. I bought this house before we got married, and I never added your name to it. Legally, you're just a guest who's overstayed her welcome." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You can't do this." "I can, and I am. You have until tomorrow morning to collect your personal belongings. Everything else stays here." "What about Stan?" "Stan stays with his father. You know, the one who actually loves him instead of treating him like an inconvenience." She tried to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Probably because she knew she'd brought this on herself. "Harlan, please, I made a mistake." "No, Liora, you made a choice. Every day for 18 months, you made the same choice. Now I'm making mine." She left that night, and I watched from the window as she loaded her suitcase into Bear's BMW. He didn't even get out to help her. Stan appeared beside me. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm better than okay, son. I'm just getting started." Chapter 3. Circuit Breaker. The next morning brought news that made my coffee taste even better than usual. Monica called to inform me that Liora had been suspended from her brokerage pending an investigation into her client relationships. Apparently, the anonymous tip had included some very specific details about her extracurricular activities. "It gets better," Monica said. "Bear's company received a package this morning. Photos, timestamps, the works. His business partners are not happy." "Any idea who sent it?" "Someone with access to very high-quality surveillance equipment and a thorough understanding of corporate politics." I smiled. Sounds like a real professional. Sounds like someone who knows exactly what he's doing. That afternoon, I was in my office reviewing drone footage from a legitimate job when Stan knocked on the door. "Dad, there's someone here to see you." Bear Cole stood in my driveway, all 6 feet 4 inches of him, wearing a suit that cost more than my truck and an expression that suggested he wasn't here for a friendly chat. He had the kind of build that came from high school football and expensive gym memberships, but there was something soft around the edges that suggested his intimidation tactics worked better on people who were afraid of him. I wasn't afraid of him. "Barrett, what brings you to my neighborhood?" "You know damn well what brings me here." "Actually, I don't. Why don't you enlighten me?" He stepped closer, trying to use his size advantage. "You sent those photos to my office." "What photos?" "Don't play games with me, Pierce. I know it was you." I think you're confused. I run a drone business. I take pictures of buildings and construction sites. I don't take pictures of cheating spouses and their boyfriends. That would be unprofessional. His face was turning red. You're going to regret this. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're the one with regrets. How's the wife handling the news about your extracurricular activities? That hit home. Bear's wife had divorced him 6 months ago, which was probably what made him available for my wife in the first place. Apparently, she'd taken half his assets and most of his dignity. This isn't over, he said. You're right, it's not. But you might want to think carefully about your next move. I have a lot more footage where that came from, and I'm just getting warmed up. He left, but not before kicking my mailbox hard enough to dent it. I made a note to add vandalism to the list of charges I was building against him. That evening, Simon came over with takeout and updates from his contacts in the local business community. Bear's in trouble, he said. Real trouble. His partners are talking about dissolving the company. Apparently, this isn't the first time he's mixed business with pleasure. Good. What about Liora? Unemployed as of this afternoon. Her brokerage decided they couldn't afford the liability. Word is spreading fast in real estate circles. Perfect. What's next? Next, we make sure everyone knows exactly who they're dealing with. The plan for Phase 2 was more elaborate. Bear had a standing reservation every Friday night at the most expensive restaurant in the city. He used it to impress clients, seduce women, and generally show off his wealth and status. This Friday, he was going to get a very different kind of attention. Simon had a contact who worked at the restaurant, and for a modest fee, they were willing to help us create a memorable evening for Bear and whoever he brought as his date. What kind of help? I asked. The kind that involves the restaurant's sound system, their projection screen, and a very special presentation during the dinner hour. You're evil. I learned from the best. Friday night, I parked across the street from the restaurant and watched through binoculars as Bear arrived with a blonde woman who wasn't my wife. Apparently, he'd moved on quickly, which made what was about to happen even more satisfying. They were seated at his usual table, right in the center of the dining room where everyone could see them. The restaurant was packed with the city's elite, politicians, business owners, society types who thrived on gossip and scandal. At exactly 8:30, the restaurant's sound system crackled to life. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special presentation this evening courtesy of Barrett, who wanted to share some of his recent business activities with all of you. The projection screen that usually showed wine lists and specials flickered to life, and suddenly the entire dining room was watching high-definition footage of Bear and my wife in his penthouse pool. The reaction was immediate and spectacular. Gasps, pointing, laughter, and the unmistakable sound of cell phones capturing every moment. Bear's face went from confusion to horror to rage in about 3 seconds, while his date grabbed her purse and headed for the exit. Bear stood up, shouting something I couldn't hear over the laughter and chaos, but the footage kept playing. 3 minutes of crystal-clear evidence of his affair with a married woman, broadcast to everyone who mattered in Kansas City society. By the time restaurant security figured out how to shut off the system, the damage was done. Half the room was recording on their phones, and the other half was already texting the news to everyone they knew. Bear stormed out of the restaurant and stood in the parking lot, looking around wildly. He spotted me across the street and started walking over, but Simon's car pulled up before he could reach me. "Time to go," Simon said. As we drove away, I could see Bear in the rearview mirror, standing alone in the parking lot, his reputation in ruins and his evening destroyed. "Think he learned his lesson?" Simon asked. "Not yet, but he will." My phone buzzed with a text from Kendra. "Did you see the news? Bear's all over social media. Leora's hiding at my house, crying." I texted back, "Tell her I said this is just the beginning." Chapter 4. Short Circuit, Revenge Unleashed. The restaurant incident made the local news by Saturday morning. Not the footage itself, but the story of a technical malfunction, that had caused inappropriate content to be displayed during dinner service. The reporter's barely contained smirk suggested she knew exactly what kind of malfunction it had been. My phone had been ringing all morning with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Reporters, probably, or maybe Bear's lawyers. I let them all go to voicemail. Stan was eating cereal and scrolling through social media when I came downstairs. "Dad, you're famous, sort of." "What do you mean?" "Look at this." He showed me his phone. Someone had posted a video of Bear's meltdown at the restaurant, and it already had 50,000 views. The comments were brutal. "Karma's a snake," Stan read. "Play with fire, get burned. This is what happens when you mess with married women." Oh, this one's good. Barrett Cole, from penthouse to doghouse in 60 seconds. Language, son. Sorry, Dad, but this is pretty awesome. My phone rang. Monica. "Mr. Pierce, you need to know something. Liora's planning to leave town. She asked me to forward her mail to an address in Chicago." "Is she taking Stan?" "That's what I'm worried about. She called the school yesterday asking about transferring his records." That changed everything. I could handle Liora running away to lick her wounds, but I wasn't about to let her drag my son into her mess. "Monica, I need you to do something for me. Name it. Find out exactly when and how she's planning to leave. Flight information, hotel reservations, anything you can get. Consider it done." I called Simon and filled him in. Within 2 hours, we had a complete picture of Liora's escape plan. She'd booked a flight to Chicago for Sunday evening, along with a ticket for Stan. She was planning to pick him up from school on Monday and drive straight to the airport. "We need to stop this," Simon said. "We will. But first, we're going to make sure she understands exactly what she's running from." Sunday morning, I drove to Bear's penthouse. The building had valet parking and a doorman who looked like he could bench press my truck, but I wasn't planning to go inside. I was planning to make sure Bear came outside. I parked across the street and launched my best drone, the one with the loudspeaker attachment I used for construction site communications. Bear's penthouse was on the 20th floor, and his balcony faced the street. The drone hovered outside his window, and I activated the speaker. "Good morning, Barrett. This is your wake-up call." I could see him through the glass, stumbling out of bed in his underwear, looking around in confusion. "You thought you could steal another man's wife and there wouldn't be consequences. You were wrong." He opened the balcony door and stepped outside, squinting up at the drone. "You ruined your business, your reputation, and your relationship with my wife, but that's not enough." Bear started waving his arms, trying to swat at the drone, but I kept it just out of reach. "You see, Barrett, I know things about you that you thought were secret. Business things, financial things, personal things." That got his attention. He stopped swatting and started listening. "Unless you want those things to become as public as your pool party, you're going to do exactly what I tell you." "What do you want?" he shouted. "I want you to call my wife and tell her that her ride to Chicago has been canceled. I want you to tell her that you never want to see her again. And I want you to mean it. And if I don't? Then tomorrow morning, your remaining business partners are going to receive a very interesting package about your creative accounting practices." Bear's face went white. Apparently, I'd hit another nerve. "You have 1 hour," I announced through the speaker. "Don't disappoint me." I flew the drone back to the truck and drove home. 53 minutes later, my phone rang. Liora, and she was sobbing. "Harlan, please, we need to talk." "No, we don't. We need you to pack your things and get out of my life. Bear won't see me anymore. He said it's over." "Smart man. Apparently he learns faster than you do. I have nowhere to go. That's not my problem anymore." "What about Stan?" "Stan stays with his father, where he belongs. You can't keep me from my son. Watch me." Monday morning, I was waiting in the school parking lot when Liora arrived. She was driving a rental car and looked like she hadn't slept in days. I got out of my truck and walked over to her. "Going somewhere?" "I'm picking up Stan." No, you're not. He's my son, too. He's 13 years old, and he deserves better than a mother who abandons her family for a cheap affair. It wasn't cheap. You're right. It cost you everything. She tried to push past me, but Simon appeared from behind another car. Mrs. Pierce, I think you should reconsider your travel plans. Who are you? I'm the man with a folder full of evidence about your affair, your lies to your clients, and your plan to kidnap your son and take him to another state without his father's permission. It's not kidnapping. I'm his mother. It is when you don't have custody, I said. Which you don't, since you abandoned the family home and have no legal residence in this state. Her face crumpled. Harlan, please. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Now live with it. She got back in the rental car and drove away. I never saw her again. That afternoon, Stan came home from school and found me in the kitchen making dinner. Dad, where's Mom? Your mother decided she needed to start a new life somewhere else. Without us? Without us. He thought about that for a minute. Are you okay with that? Son, I'm better than okay. We're better off without people who don't appreciate what they have. So, what happens now? Now we move on. Just you and me, and we make sure that anyone who tries to hurt our family learns exactly what that costs them. Stan grinned. Can I help with that part? You already have, son. You already have. Chapter 5. Surge, the Business War. 2 weeks after Liora's departure, I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning when my business accountant called with news that made my coffee go cold. Harlan, we have a problem. Someone's filed a lien against your company. What kind of lien? A big one. They're claiming you owe $200,000 in damages for industrial espionage and corporate sabotage. That's ridiculous. Who filed it? Coal Development Group on behalf of Barrett Coal and associated business partners. Bear wasn't done fighting. He was trying to destroy my business the same way I'd destroyed his reputation. I called Simon immediately. They can't make it stick, he said after I explained the situation. But they can tie up your assets while it works through the courts. That could take months. I don't have months. I have payroll, equipment leases, insurance payments. Then we need to end this fast. What do you know about Bear's business partners? Not much. Why? Because if Bear's trying to use them to come after you, we need to know exactly who we're dealing with. That afternoon, Monica called with information that changed everything. Mr. Pierce, I've been doing some research on Coal Development Group. You're not going to believe what I found. Try me. Bear's been cooking the books, not just a little creative accounting, major fraud. He's been inflating property values, hiding debt, and skimming money from investor accounts. How do you know this? Because Liora helped him. She was falsifying appraisals on properties he was flipping. That's why their affair was so dangerous. It wasn't just personal, it was criminal conspiracy. Do you have proof? I have copies of everything. Liora kept records, probably as insurance in case Bear tried to throw her under the bus. Where are these records? Hidden in a safety deposit box downtown. I have the key. That evening, Simon and I met Monica at the bank. The safety deposit box contained a treasure trove of evidence: falsified documents, forged signatures, bank records showing money transfers, and most importantly, recorded phone conversations between Liora and Bear discussing their scheme. This is enough to put them both in prison, Simon said. Bear, yes, but Liora's already gone. Doesn't matter. What matters is that Bear's business partners don't know about this yet. When they find out, they're going to distance themselves from him so fast it'll make your head spin. What do you suggest? We give them a choice. Drop the lien against your company, or we release everything to the FBI, the IRS, and every business reporter in the state. The next morning, I drove to the offices of Coal Development Group. The building was one of those glass and steel monuments to corporate success, the kind of place where people in expensive suits made decisions that affected other people's lives. Bear's main business partner was a man named Richard Vance, a real estate investor who owned half the commercial properties in Kansas City. He had the kind of reputation that couldn't survive being associated with fraud. "Mr. Vance will see you now," his secretary said after I'd waited exactly 37 minutes, long enough to show I wasn't important, but not long enough to be insulting. Vance was in his 60s, silver-haired, and had the kind of handshake that suggested he was used to getting his way. His office overlooked the city, and the walls were covered with photos of him shaking hands with politicians and celebrities. "Mr. Pierce, I understand you have some concerns about our legal action against your company. I have some information you might find interesting about your business partner." "I'm listening." I placed a manila envelope on his desk. "Barrett Cole has been defrauding investors for at least 2 years. He's falsified property appraisals, hidden debt, and skimmed money from client accounts. Everything you need to verify this is in that envelope." Vance opened the envelope and spent 10 minutes reading through the documents. His expression went from skeptical to concerned to furious. "Where did you get this?" "Let's just say Barrett wasn't as careful about covering his tracks as he thought." "What do you want?" "I want the lien against my company dropped. Today. And I want Barrett Cole removed from any business dealings that might affect my family or my livelihood. And in exchange? In exchange, you get to distance yourself from a criminal before the FBI comes knocking, because they will come knocking, Mr. Vance. The only question is whether you're still in business with Barrett when they do." Vance leaned back in his chair and studied me for a long moment. "You know, Mr. Pierce, I underestimated you." "A lot of people do. It's one of my greatest assets. The lien will be dropped by close of business today. As for Barrett, consider him removed from our organization." "Permanently?" "Very permanently." I stood up to leave, then turned back. "One more thing, Mr. Vance. If Barrett tries to come after my family again in any way, I'll make sure every business owner in this city knows exactly what kind of man he is. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear, Mr. Pierce, crystal clear." That afternoon, Bear called my office. He was screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You snake! You destroyed my company!" "No, Barrett, you destroyed your company when you decided to steal money from your investors. I just made sure the right people found out about it." "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. Your business partners have cut you loose, your reputation is destroyed, and if you come anywhere near me or my family again, I'll make sure you spend the next 10 years in federal prison." "You can't prove anything." "I can prove everything. Bank records, forged documents, recorded phone calls with my ex-wife. Did you really think she wouldn't keep insurance in case you tried to betray her?" The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. "Stay away from me, Barrett. Stay away from my son. And if you're smart, you'll leave town before the FBI decides to take a closer look at your business practices." He hung up without another word. That evening, Stan and I ordered pizza and watched the news. The business segment included a story about Cole Development Group filing for bankruptcy and Barrett Cole being removed from the company pending an investigation into financial irregularities. "Dad, did you do that?" "I gave some people information they needed to make informed business decisions." "That's not really an answer." "No, son, it's not. But it's the only answer you're going to get." Stan grinned. "I can live with that." "Good. Because tomorrow we start the final phase." "There's more?" "There's always more, son. The key is knowing when to stop." Chapter 6. Power Surge. Final Showdown. 3 months had passed since Bear's business collapsed and Liora disappeared from our lives. Stan and I had settled into a comfortable routine: school, work, baseball practice, and the occasional drone-flying session that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with father-son bonding. I thought we were done with the past. I was wrong. The call came on a Thursday evening while Stan and I were grilling burgers in the backyard. Monica, and she sounded panicked. "Mr. Pierce, you need to know something. Leora's back in town." "So?" She's not alone. She's with Barrett, and they're planning something. That got my attention. What kind of something? I don't know exactly, but I overheard a phone conversation. Something about getting what they're owed and making you pay for ruining their lives. Where are they staying? The Marriott downtown, room 847. Mr. Pierce, I think they might be planning to rob your house. I thanked Monica and hung up, then called Simon. How sure are we about this? He asked. Sure enough. Can you get Detective Fuller to keep an eye on things? Ray Fuller was Simon's old partner from his police days, now working robbery division. He owed Simon a few favors and had been quietly helpful during our campaign against Bear and Liora. I'll call him. But Harlan, if they're really planning to break into your house, maybe you and Stan should stay somewhere else for a few days. No. I'm tired of running from these people. It's time to end this. What do you have in mind? I have an idea, but I'm going to need your help, and it's going to require some very precise timing. Friday night, Stan was at his friend's house for a sleepover, which meant the house was empty, except for me, and about $50,000 worth of surveillance equipment I'd installed over the past week. Cameras in every room, motion detectors, sound recording devices, and a few surprises that Bear and Liora weren't expecting. At 11:30 p.m., my security system detected movement in the backyard. I watched on my phone as two figures approached the back door, Liora with a key she'd apparently kept, and Bear with what looked like a crowbar. They were both dressed in black, like amateur burglars in a bad movie. Liora opened the door with her key, and they stepped into my kitchen. Where's the safe? I heard Bear whisper through the audio system. Upstairs in his office, Liora replied. They crept through the house, not knowing that every step was being recorded in high definition and broadcast live to Simon's phone, Detective Fuller's phone, and about 20 other people I'd decided should witness the final act of this drama. I was waiting in my office when they reached the top of the stairs. The safe was open, and stacks of cash were visible inside. Actually just newspapers with $100 bills on top, but it looked convincing in the dim light. There, Liora said, pointing. That's where he keeps everything. Bear approached the safe, and I stepped out of the shadows. Looking for something? They both spun around, Liora gasping and Bear raising the crowbar. Hello, Liora, Barrett. I was wondering when you'd show up. Harlan, Liora said, trying to compose herself. This isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like my ex-wife and her boyfriend breaking into my house to rob me. You owe us, Bear said, still holding the crowbar. You destroyed our lives. No, I gave you exactly what you deserved. There's a difference. We lost everything because of you. You lost everything because you're thieves and liars who got caught. I just made sure the right people knew about it. Bear took a step forward with the crowbar, and I smiled. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Barrett. You see, we're not alone. What do you mean? I mean that everything you've said and done since you walked into my house has been recorded and broadcast live to about 20 people, including Detective Ray Fuller of the Kansas City Police Department. Bear's face went white. You're bluffing. Am I? I held up my phone, showing the live stream. Say hello to the internet, Barrett. You're about to be famous again. Liora started crying. Harlan, please. We just need enough money to start over somewhere else. You had 15 years to start over, Liora. You chose to throw it away for a man who's now dragging you into a life of crime. It doesn't have to be like this, Bear said. You're right, it doesn't. You could have accepted that your actions have consequences and moved on with your lives. Instead, you decided to compound your mistakes by adding breaking and entering to your list of crimes. The sound of sirens was getting closer. That would be the police, I said. Right on schedule. Bear looked around desperately, still holding the crowbar. We can work this out. No, we can't. You see, Barrett, I gave you multiple chances to walk away. I could have sent you to prison months ago for fraud. Instead, I let you lose your business and your reputation and hoped that would be enough. But it wasn't enough for you, was it? You ruined everything. I held up a mirror. You ruined everything yourself. The police were in the house now, coming up the stairs. Detective Fuller appeared in the doorway with 2 uniformed officers. Evening, Harlan. Having some trouble with uninvited guests? Nothing I can't handle, Ray, but I think these 2 might need some new accommodations. Bear dropped the crowbar and raised his hands. Liora collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Barrett, Cole, and Liora Pierce, Detective Fuller said. You're under arrest for breaking and entering, attempted burglary, and criminal trespass. As they were led away in handcuffs, Liora looked back at me one last time. I'm sorry, Harlan. I'm really sorry. No, you're not, I replied. You're just sorry you got caught. After the police left, Simon arrived with coffee and a grin that could have lit up the city. Well, that was entertaining. It was necessary. So what happens now? Now they go to prison, and Stan and I get on with our lives. Any regrets? I thought about that for a moment. Just one. What's that? I should have done this 18 months ago. The next morning, Stan came home from his sleepover to find me making pancakes and reading the newspaper. Dad, why are there police cars in our driveway? Your mother and her boyfriend decided to visit us last night, uninvited. Are they in jail? They are indeed. Stan poured himself orange juice and sat down at the kitchen table. So, it's really over now? It's really over. Good. I was getting tired of all the drama. Me too, son. Me too. That afternoon, Monica called with news that the district attorney was planning to prosecute both Bear and Liora to the full extent of the law. With their previous crimes and the evidence from the break-in, they were looking at several years in prison. Any word from their lawyers? I asked. Bear's lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal. Leora's lawyer wants to know if you'd be willing to consider a reduced sentence in exchange for her testimony against Barrett. What did you tell them? I told them to talk to you directly. Good, because I have a very simple message for both of them. What's that? Actions have consequences. They made their choices, and now they get to live with the results. That evening, I was in my office reviewing drone footage from a legitimate job when Stan knocked on the door. Dad, there's something I want to ask you. Shoot. Are you proud of what we did? I thought about that question for a long time before answering. Son, I'm proud that we stood up for ourselves. I'm proud that we didn't let people walk all over our family. And I'm proud that we proved that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're above the law. But I hope we never have to do anything like this again. Me too, Dad. Me too. 6 months later, Barrett Cole was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for fraud and 2 years in state prison for burglary, to be served consecutively. Liora received 3 years for her role in the fraud scheme and 1 year for the break-in. Stan and I watched the sentencing on the local news, eating pizza and talking about his upcoming high school applications. Dad, do you think Mom will ever change? I don't know, son, but it's not our job to fix her. Our job is to build a good life for ourselves and not let other people's bad choices drag us down. That sounds like something you learned the hard way. Most important lessons are learned the hard way. The doorbell rang, and I answered it to find a delivery man with an envelope addressed to me. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. Mr. Pierce, thank you for showing me that there are still people in this world who believe in justice. Your actions saved my company and probably my family's future. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to call. Richard Vance. I showed the note to Stan, who grinned. Dad, I think you made an impression. Sometimes that's all it takes, son. Sometimes you just have to show people that there are still consequences for bad behavior, and that good people don't have to be victims. Is that what we were doing? Making sure there were consequences? That's exactly what we were doing. That night, after Stan went to bed, I sat in my office and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Barrett Cole and Liora Pierce were beginning to understand that their choices had led them exactly where they deserved to be. I'd started this journey as an underestimated husband, whose wife thought he was an idiot. I'd ended it as a man who'd proven that intelligence, patience, and careful planning could overcome arrogance, betrayal, and corruption. The best part? I'd done it all legally, methodically, and with the kind of precision that would make any drone operator proud. Stan was right. It was finally over. But more importantly, we'd won. Not just the battle, but the war. And we'd done it without compromising our principles or becoming the kind of people we were fighting against. Tomorrow I'd go back to flying drones and taking pictures of construction sites. Stan would go to school and play baseball and worry about normal teenage things. We'd build a life that had nothing to do with revenge or payback or settling scores. But if anyone